there's always hope for healing, and your body isn't broken. It wants to heal. Like our bodies are brilliant. Like they actually don't want to be
Exactly.
in these like stress states. They sometimes they just need like the right protocols and the right order and the right timing and everything. So I think just understanding that piece and then I guess sort of related to that, I had to learn that my value and my worth was not just in what I could produce for the world and what I could do for other people. I was such a people pleaser and like I don't know if any of you know the Enneagram. I'm a two, so I'm like the helper,
Okay.
like the very people person. My relationships are everything to me. And so I had to give that up in healing because I was used to like in my friendships, I'm the one planning everyone's birthdays, buying people gifts, cooking dinner for everyone. Like I couldn't do any of that stuff
Mhm.
anymore. And so I just had to learn like, my soul and like my heart is enough and who I am is enough. And I don't have to be constantly like doing, doing, doing. Because I think that's part of why I crashed in the first place is like this stress of keep
Yeah.
going, push harder, be the best at everything. And so, really, like understanding that I'm valuable for who I am and not just what I can do. That was a surprising part of healing for me because I wasn't expecting to need to like go so deep into like my own beliefs about myself, but I needed to do that in order to like move past certain parts of healing and feel like I was aligned with like my mind, body, and soul.
Hey, beautiful. Welcome back to PCOS Unfiltered. I'm your host, Lindsie, and today's conversation is one I know so many of you are going to feel deeply because we're not just talking about PCOS, we're talking about what happens when your body completely changes, you don't have answers, and you're left trying to figure it all out on your own. Today, I'm joined by Allie Chandler, who shares her incredibly powerful journey from being active, healthy, and thriving to suddenly becoming chronically ill after a trip abroad, navigating years of symptoms, misdiagnoses, and ultimately having to become her own advocate in the healing process. In this episode, we go way beyond surface level conversations. We talk about the gap between conventional and functional medicine and why so many women fall through it, what most people get wrong about supplements, especially with PCOS, the real non negotiables for healing. Hint, it's not just what you're eating. And one of my favorite topics, the nervous system, trauma, and why your body needs to feel safe before it can actually heal. We also dive into the emotional side of this journey, the identity shifts, the pressure to do everything right, and the moment you realize healing isn't about doing more, it's about doing differently. If you've ever felt like you're doing all the things and still not seeing results, this episode is going to give you a completely new lens to look through. Now, as always, the content shared on PCOS Unfiltered is for informational and educational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests are not intended to serve as medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, exercise, or treatment plan. The information shared is based on personal experience and expert interviews and is not a substitute for professional medical guidance. Okay, let's do this. Here's my conversation with Allie Chandler. Um, you talk about boring but magic foundations.
Yeah.
For someone with PCOS struggling with weight, insulin resistance, inflammation, what are the non-negotiables?
Well, so funny. We talk about nervous system regulation. That is one that I think is super important. And I'm sure a lot of people have heard of like cortisol levels, and if they're struggling with weight, that can definitely like help, block fat loss and
Mhm.
kind of impact insulin resistance, which also makes it harder to lose weight. Vagus nerve work, breath work is great. Some of these like very free basic components. And like I said, if you're interested in limbic system retraining, just Google it and you'll learn a lot about like what are the things you can actually do. And it's all just internal brain work, right? It's like visualizations and it's these mantras and affirmations that you say to yourself. But I think anyone dealing with any sort of condition that all these things kind of apply. It's not necessarily PCOS
That's true.
specific. Yeah. And so,
Yeah.
blood sugar too. I'm sure you talk a lot about like food and nutrition and diet and also like when to time different foods. So work with someone who understands the nutrition side and like when to eat carbs and what carbs are okay and like how to pair things together. There's so many different
Mm,
pieces, especially for people with PCOS. Um, and something interesting too is just thinking about movement. Like, even if you can do something really gentle, you
yeah.
don't have to be doing like marathons or these really intense, heavy, lifting because that can sometimes be detrimental if you're not ready to do that. But like going for walks or if you want to do some weight training and things like that. Of course, we know that, insulin sensitivity is improved if you have muscle. So there's a lot of good things about, taking the time to build some muscle that can be
Mm,
helpful. And then I don't know if you see this a lot with people, but I've found even like my friends who have PCOS, a lot of them have a lot of gut issues. I don't know if that's
mm,
something that you come across a lot or if that's a coincidence, but I think like, the foundation of gut healing and the world we live in is, there's so many toxins and chemicals and we're
yep.
ingesting all these things in our water and our air and so even if you eat organic and even if you feel like you're doing a good job, you're still going to be exposed to a lot of these things and a lot of us have taken antibiotics multiple times in our lives. So even, if it's not PCOS specific, I do think thinking about your gut as a foundation is also really important. But I'm also curious to hear what you think on, what are some of the foundational, because you are such a PCOS expert. So, oh, and sleep, of course. Sleep is so important.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I think yeah, nervous system regulation is key. Like the basis for my 90-day program is breath
Yeah.
work.
Yep.
And then kind of tackling some of that inner work to see,
Mhm.
where the ties are to, emotional ties to
Yeah.
certain foods that we may not even realize. Mindlessly we've just been going about these things for, years.
Right.
So yeah, that's definitely step number one, the foundation, I think for any of it. So I mean, that's probably why
Agreed.
we clicked because,
I know.
you know, because you
Totally.
also understand that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, the other thing is, sure, we can talk about like removing foods all day long, but
Mhm.
even before that, you really have to think about adding in
Like
to
that.
really, yeah, start replacing with some good nutrients,
Mhm.
and then your body will naturally want to like kind of self-eliminate the other stuff that's
Totally.
not serving you. So really just flooding the body with some nutrients and depending on where people are, that might mean adding like, one protein or one veggie to one meal, where I could
Right.
say
So
I want you to do it,
small.
yeah, with each meal. That might be a lot for
Mhm. Yep.
a lot of people. And then yeah, I think movement, I would agree. And I get asked too. I'm like, what's the best exercises
Right.
for somebody with PCOS? And
Mhm.
we could argue, maybe you need to walk, maybe you need a little bit of cardio, maybe you just need all strength training, whatever. But I always
Yeah.
tell people, I'm like, it's whatever you will do, whatever
100%.
you feel like
Yeah.
serves you, because I don't want it to stress you out. I don't want to tell you to lift weights if you don't enjoy lifting weights. If you
Yeah.
enjoy yoga and going for some walks, then do that. Like the
Mhm.
important thing is just moving your body, because especially in today's world, we're in front of computers and we're in front of TVs then at the end of the day, and we're not getting out there, and just moving our body. So even like just
Yeah.
some stretching, if you are stuck at a computer all day, some stretching in
Yeah.
between meetings can still be really super beneficial,
Mhm.
if you can't get. And that's the other thing too, I think, is when people hear like exercise, that's why I try to say movement really over exercise, because then they associate with, well, I need like an hour of my day to do that, and I don't have time
Yes.
for that. And it's
Mhm.
no, 5, 10 minutes here and there, that adds up. That can still have a lot
Yeah.
of benefit. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think I also am of the mindset, and I have to work against this, is I'm like very type A and very perfectionist. So for me, if somebody told me like you need to exercise, I would be like, okay, 2 hours a day, every single day. And like that's not going to be helpful. Like
Yeah.
pushing myself
Yeah.
into this like high stress, like fight or flight adrenaline, like that's not going to be
Hmm.
helpful to my healing. So if you're like that and you're like a, high performer and you're kind of like, I need to check all the boxes off, I'm going to do it perfectly. Like that's so how I am. And so I think like part of healing has to be like be okay with doing a little bit, or like you said with the meals, like
Yeah.
be okay with starting slowly. You don't have to like cold turkey get rid of everything in your
Hmm.
house. I think sometimes people maybe get misinformed where it's like, oh, there's a certain diet for PCOS. Let me throw everything away. Let me waste hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
My partner, like whoever my friends are probably like, what are you doing? Like this is,
Yeah.
and I think like I like that you said that about just starting slow and do stuff that you can feel good about and that you can just like
Hmm.
check it off and be like, I was successful at this. Like I added protein to my breakfast every day this week. That's a huge win, you know? It's like
Exactly.
taking these little steps. And also, I think like the dopamine of being successful at something is also really helpful rather than being like,
Yeah.
oh, I failed because I had this like quote unquote cheat meal or, I
Yeah.
had something that I shouldn't have. I feel like there's definitely this like diet culture, like food is bad, food is good. And, that can also kind of be difficult
Exactly.
for people. And it's really
Yeah.
just like finding a balance and knowing what is good for your PCOS or whatever you're dealing with and do more of
Hmm.
that. Like you said, instead of eliminating all of it, I feel like that's a lot more useful of a mindset than like get rid of XYZ and 100 different things. That's
Yeah.
stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you have to think about like what you're going to, if you truly want to feel better and want to make it a lifestyle and want it to, last, I think you
Mhm.
really have to think about what's going to be realistic and what's going to serve your body. Like, sure, you might be able to do, like you said, 2 hours a day,
Mhm.
every day for a week. Probably not, but like
Right.
realistically, you're not going to stick to that. I enjoy working out. I don't have time for that. I don't necessarily want to be in the gym two
Right.
hours every single day
Oh,
either,
yeah.
you know? And I think even that kind of goes with the supplements and stuff too. Like, is that something that you're going to actually take the rest of your life?
Right.
And that's where some of these other pieces need to come in. Like, sure, it can kind of bridge that gap and help you, get motivated and get there so that maybe it'll give you a little bit more energy so you can start adding some more movement in.
Right.
But then realistically, in the long term, you have to really think about what are these things that you're gonna, really focus on and really stick to. Yeah.
Totally. I feel like everybody that I know with PCOS has a supplement graveyard of things that they have. Oh, I should be taking that. I read a really good
Yeah.
article, and then you take it for a month. I do this. I take it for a month or two, and I'm so good at it. And then I'm like, oh, we'll forget about that for like 6 months or 7 months. And then I'll
Yeah.
see it somewhere else, and I'll be like, oh, shoot, like there's,
Yeah.
that supplement that I was supposed to take. But yeah, I think like building in the small wins is a really good idea.
Hmm.
I like that.
Yeah. 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 I know. My husband travels a lot for work, and so I go with him sometimes. And
Mhm.
so I do travel like enough. And yeah, that's the other thing, like with supplements and stuff, because I'm like, realistically, I'm not gonna be taking all of this stuff for like,
Yeah. No,
for a week or whatever. I'm gonna have like a whole other suitcase just full
right.
of
It's a lot to
full of
pack.
supplements. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
You also help practitioners communicate better with patients. So, what do you
Mhm.
see holistic doctors missing when they're working, especially with PCOS patients?
Yeah, I would say part of it, I think, for them is understanding there can still be like sort of root causes in conjunction with PCOS that can be impacting hormones and like the weight gain and everything. Like it doesn't have to be only PCOS. So I feel like, you know,
Mm,
doing a little bit deeper of a dive into like, well, do you have any like other things going on? Do you have the gut health issue is a good example of that? Or do you have, like parasites even, or, heavy metals, or are there other like toxins that maybe we need to address? And even like digging into environmental factors, I feel like is such an underrated, thing with any chronic
mm,
condition, but also like hormone disruptors. Are you drinking out of plastic? Are you microwaving plastic? There's like little things about lifestyle and, using glass and, using kind of better quality with some things like that. So I think a lot of practitioners that I've seen are, they're a little bit like, more strict, I would say. Like your approach is so doable. And they're like, okay, like let's do this diet. Let's do like an AIP diet, which is very
Mm.
intense. Like that is
Oh
like you
yeah.
can't even have eggs. Like you can't have
Yeah.
really anything on that diet. So I've seen this like very extreme swing where it probably, yes, it's anti-inflammatory and probably, yes, that will help with the weight loss or help with some of these other side effects. But I think what I love about what you talk about is the foundations and like how do we
Hmm.
like get the foundations on track and how do we like slowly move toward this like balanced way of dealing with it where we're not being so extreme and we're not like that's going to stress your body out too and we don't want to like have this sudden like change where then you're like stressed because you're like, oh, I can't mess up at all. Like we don't want to get into that
Yeah.
mindset. And so I think
Yeah.
part of it too is finding someone who can understand and validate like the emotional side of PCOS because like there's some factors that are very like integrated into body image like if you have the hair
Oh
growth or
yeah.
if you have the weight gain and everything like that's a an entire side of it that I've had a few when I was going through my PCOS diagnosis and kind of like figuring out my treatment for that, I was probably like 30-ish pounds more than I am now. And it was a struggle because I was like, I feel like I'm eating really healthy. I'm moving, I'm
Hmm.
exercising. Like, this doesn't make sense. I don't feel like I'm aligned with like how my body looks right now. And so I feel like that a lot of times practitioners would like gloss over that piece. But I do feel like working through like body image and the emotional side of healing is also really important. And same with nervous system,
Yeah.
which we talked about as well. But
Yeah.
kind of like the whole bigger picture, especially with PCOS. And it's like a very like, I don't know, I feel like there's a very heavy tide of body image, of course, with
Oh
PCOS and all
yeah.
the things that go along with it, like the symptoms that people have who have PCOS, and even like the fertility and like there's a lot of things that impact like your identity even. So kind of like
Hmm.
figuring out that piece of it along with the protocols and the nervous system support and like the diet, the nutrition piece.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's why I felt like I felt called to this community of women with PCOS because I would see that in the ER, and I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time with them in the ER, obviously, but you would still just see how they were acting and reacting, to conversations and all that, and you could tell what they were
Yeah.
dealing with, a lot of the body image stuff, and then like you mentioned, the depression and anxiety and stuff that might go along with that. And going back to what you were saying too about the environment, I think that is a super important thing to bring up too, because I do hear it, and I see it like I'm in a few Facebook groups, for women with PCOS as well. And they're like, I'm eating, they feel like they're doing all the right things. They've
Right.
eliminated sugar, they're eating well overall. And yeah, there definitely could be more in the environment that we don't realize. Like there's all these factors that can stress out the body and put you in that, that fight or flight response, right? I mean, there's some that sure we can't control
Right.
all of it, but I think taking a look at your home to
Mhm.
see, what are you washing your clothes in? What's your makeup? What's in your makeup? Your skincare products, and then like you said, what are you drinking out of? All of that stuff I think is
Definitely.
super important
And
as
even
well.
mold, like if you dive
Oh
into
yeah.
like how horrible mold, I mean, mold's bad for pretty much every body part and organ and system in your body, but it
Yeah.
does impact hormones as well. So, yeah, there's so many pieces where I feel like a great practitioner will really dive into all those things with you. And
Mhm.
like, like you would talk about childhood or traumas or, there's so many pieces to it.
Yeah.
It's not just like a
Yeah.
buy this one supplement and you'll be better and everything will be great. So,
Yeah. Exactly.
so it's a puzzle for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. What is the hardest truth that you had to, kind of accept on your own healing journey that you maybe wish someone had told you earlier?
Yeah, I think for me, I was used to my whole life being able to solve things. Like if I work hard enough at this, I'm going to get the A. I'm going to be state in volleyball, or I'm going to accomplish the thing I'm setting out to accomplish if I just like work hard enough. And so when I was healing, I feel like I approached healing in that same way, where it was like the more I do, the better I'm going to feel, right? Like, if I just like
Yeah.
dedicate all this time to supplements, diet, all these things, then in my head, I'm like, I should be better. And I wasn't. So it was very baffling to me because I'm like, I'm putting so much time and energy and like stress and, all the fight or flight and panic and all of this. Like, I wasn't even in a healing state to be able to like receive all of the nutrients and receive,
Mhm.
what the benefits of the supplements. So I think just one, learning that healing isn't going to be linear and it's going to be this like up and down path. And you're probably going to have some like really great weeks. And then you might have, something where you're like, oh my gosh, the cramps or this or my gut
Yeah.
or, all these things are feeling like they're just crashing around me. But I feel like we see these charts all the time where it's like it's not just like an upward single line, but as long as your trajectory, like if you're trending in the right direction, there's going to be these ups and downs and just know like you're not heading all the way back to the beginning. Like whatever you're
Mhm.
doing, you're investing in yourself and you're putting your best foot forward and maybe you're like this 80/20 where you're doing your best on diet or you're most of the time you're doing all the things that you should be doing and maybe you have a couple days off or you forget your supplements a few days but as long as you're kind of like staying consistent just know that like it's not going to be an overnight thing but if you put this work into yourself and especially give yourself the foundations to like receive the healing and the nervous
Yeah.
system support and all of these things, then just know like it is going to happen and there is hope for healing. There's always hope for healing, and your body isn't broken. It wants to heal. Like our bodies are brilliant. Like they actually don't want to be
Exactly.
in these like stress states. They just need like the right protocols and the right order and the right timing and everything. So I think just understanding that piece and then I guess sort of related to that, I had to learn that my value and my worth was not just in what I could produce for the world and what I could do for other people. I was such a people pleaser and like I don't know if any of you know the Enneagram. I'm a two, so I'm like the helper,
Okay.
like the very people person. My relationships are everything to me. And so I had to give that up in healing because I was used to like in my friendships, I'm the one planning everyone's birthdays, buying people gifts, cooking dinner for everyone. Like I couldn't do any of that stuff
Mhm.
anymore. And so I just had to learn like, my soul and like my heart is enough and who I am is enough. And I don't have to be constantly like doing, doing, doing. Cause I think that's part of why I crashed in the first place is like this stress of
Yeah.
keep going, push harder, be the best at everything. And so really like understanding that I'm valuable for who I am and not just what I can do. That was a surprising part of healing for me because I wasn't expecting to need to like go so deep into like my own beliefs about myself, but I needed to do that in order to like move past certain parts of healing and feel like I was aligned with like my mind, body and soul again. I feel like it was very fragmented when I was so sick. I didn't really like claim any of these things together because it felt very disjointed. But yeah, so those are kind of the two biggest takeaways for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm, yeah, right there with you, like doing all
Mhm.
the things, saying yes to everything, right? Trying to help everybody, solve everybody's problems.
Exactly.
And at some point it caught up with me as well. And so I hope for anybody listening, because I feel like I probably heard that at some
Mhm.
point, like, oh, you need to
Mhm.
slow down, right? But you don't
You
listen
don't
until
listen,
you
no.
until you have to listen.
Yeah, exactly. Your body
So
will
yeah.
make sure you listen in one way or another. Like,
Exactly.
slow down.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap up, what's your vision for how PCOS treatment and communication needs to evolve, based off of your experience and what you're seeing now with things?
Yeah, I would say, like we talked about, the biggest thing I think is the nervous system support, but also addressing trauma. So we didn't dive too far into this, but that was a big piece of my like hormone side of things is some trauma around like weight when I was younger. And like I would get bullied for how I looked in middle school. And, that's such a traumatic time anyway to be a middle schooler. And
Yeah.
then, and I wasn't even like, I wouldn't say I was hugely overweight. I was like a little bit, I've always had like a little bit thicker of a body. It's just kind of like my body type. And but I distinctly remember like every single time someone bullied me about my weight when I was like 10, 12, 13. And so a big part of my healing, I felt like, was addressing that trauma and not internalizing like all of these things that people had said. And there was someone very close to me in my childhood who was very aggressively mean about my body too. And so it was like a lot, and not everyone has the same story, but with, the hormone things, a lot of times people at some point or another will have some sort of body image concern or, they'll have something. And so for me, a big part of that was really addressing that in therapy and feeling like I could like give that up and not take that burden on because when I tell you like I remember the exact room I was in, what I was wearing, who was there, like those things imprint on you, especially when you're a
Hmm.
kid and you're so young. And so I do think like more informed trauma processing along with the nervous system support can be really a beautiful way to kind of like start this healing journey. And not just PCOS. I feel like that's probably, great for anyone. But with PCOS and like we talked about like the body image stuff and kind of like sometimes there's emotional like shame or guilt or, there's these kind of like stuck emotions too that you can process through, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. But I do think this more holistic approach for treating PCOS is definitely, it sounds like people are, and people are educating more on it. And like, I love everything you say about it. So the word is getting out there, even on this
Yeah.
podcast, so that you're, getting it out into the world, which I love. So
Yeah.
I do think that we're moving in the right direction and it's becoming more of this like whole body, mind, body, spirit, how's your soul? Like we're not just physical vessels. Like there's so much to
Mhm.
us as humans. And how do we take all of those things into moving forward into healing? We can't ignore like 3 out of 4 pieces of our bodies. Like it's all together. Like we're all this one little human. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think moving in that direction is amazing, and hopefully more people will jump on the nervous system regulation bandwagon and also like being able to just know like, hey, you did your best and that's okay today. Like having I guess like having the lack of guilt and the lack of like pressure is really great for people as they're healing and just like focus on the wins, focus on the little things that you can do and don't get so stressed if you're not 100% perfect because you're going to, be on this healing trajectory if you're doing the right things. So just
Yeah.
hanging in there and, being able to not have the shame and the guilt and the pressure on you, I think is, really, really important.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I appreciate you saying that too, because you've been through it. And I've had other experts on. I've other conversations on some episodes and stuff where we do talk about traumas and the tie to PCOS and
Hmm.
several other conditions. In
Yeah.
most cases, probably a lot of conditions.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, it's definitely I like you said. I think the trauma informed care is kind of coming about more. We are seeing that more and how that can all be connected and whether it's PCOS or anything else. I think we're starting to, wake up to the fact
Move in
that
that direction.
it's
Yeah.
yes, it's
Mhm.
all tied together. Yeah.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
love that. I'm really happy that that's becoming a part of the conversation across the board.
Mhm.
So I think it's very needed.
Yes, for sure. And and I think part of the other, what I do with this podcast too is just introducing some of those other therapies too. Like I have had somebody on that's talked about tapping. Um,
Great.
I talk about human design, like my sister-in-law, and I've actually had somebody else that specifically, an expert that talks about human design and how she uses that just to better her relationships. She understands like how her spouse communicates better and how that can help with your stress levels and your nervous
Totally.
system, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, so I think, yeah, just super important. And I really appreciate you bringing that up.
of course.
Um, Last question is how can somebody find you and connect with you? I'll of course link everything in the show notes, but I still like you to
Yeah.
put it out
Oh,
there.
of course. Yeah. So I would say one cool place to go is upsellhealth.com/brain. And so I have a little freebie there, which is basically like none of it is supplements. It's not any of like the physical side. It's just what did I do to get like my emotional body, my mindset, my mental health, limbic system all, on track to heal. So a lot of them are sort of like nervous system or vagus nerve related. A lot of them are free. Like you can look up EFT on YouTube. There's a lot of free resources. So I think that's a great place to start. And then I also have a patient archetype, which I didn't talk too much about, which we can link. But if you're curious, if you're struggling to find a practitioner that feels like a good fit and they feel like they're super aligned in what you're looking for, I do have a patient archetype that I'm working on a matching system that will
Ooh.
intake like everything that you care about as a patient and like your root causes, and it'll be able to match you with practitioners and brands. So that's just upsellhealth.com/archetype. So those are two kind of interesting places that you can go.
Awesome. Love
Yeah.
it. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with me, and, sharing your story. And I think so much can be gained from anybody listening. So I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's always great chatting with you.
Thank you. I loved this conversation with Allie. We had a great time recording it. And if this episode resonated with you, I want you to take a moment and ask yourself, where am I trying to force my body instead of actually supporting it? Because one of the biggest takeaways from today's conversation is this: your body isn't broken, it's communicating. And healing doesn't happen through pressure, perfection, or doing more. It happens when your body finally feels safe enough to respond. And that's exactly the work we do here. If you loved this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We have some incredible conversations lined up. And share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And leave a review. It helps more women find these conversations and start their own healing journey. And as always, if you're ready to go deeper, whether that's through my programs, workshops, or just learning how to better understand your body, you can find all of that in the show notes. Remember, you don't have to live stuck in your diagnosis. That's it for now. I'm sending you so much love, and I'll see you on the next episode of PCOS Unfiltered. Nourish, heal, thrive.